first of all, let's talk about this for a second. One of the big pieces of news, if not maybe the biggest news that came out of Comic-Con this year, was the casting of two-time Academy Award winner Mahershala Ali as Blade, and that Blade is indeed coming back. A question arises, though. It's like, okay, we know who's starring in it, but who's going to be directing this movie? Who will be directing it? Well, one person we know who will not be directing that film is Get Out director Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele has basically said he's not going to be directing that movie whatsoever. Now, it's not to say that he was offered the film, but he was asked about it in a recent interview, and this comes from the good folks over at MovieWeb, and he said the following. So many of those properties, comic book films, it's a childhood dream to be able to essentially see what you saw in your imagination as a child, watching or reading, whatever you were doing with that stuff. It's a filmmaker's dream. But I feel like I only have so much time. I have a lot of stories to tell, and it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. I'm a comic book and graphic novel appreciator, but I can't call myself a true fanboy, which, I don't think you necessarily have to call yourself a true fanboy to direct a film, but whatever. Rob, you're hearing these comments from a director like Jordan Peele saying, you know what, it sounds great. I love these movies and everything, but I have my own stories that I want to tell. We talk about that when it comes to a guy like Quentin Tarantino quite a bit, that he's always kind of resisted the idea of going to a franchise or a pre-existing IP and stuff like that for the most part. And because he has his own original stories he wants to do. Are you surprised to hear a guy like Jordan Peele at this point of his career kind of lay it out and draw a line and say, I'm not interested in directing those films even though I like them because I got my own stories that I want to do. How do you feel about those comments?
Well, I think he's absolutely right. Look, I think a lot of the great filmmakers in the world, I'm a huge fan of, say, Stanley Kubrick. He's my favorite director. He tended to adapt other people's books. So he was really that's where he found most of his inspiration. He'd work with other writers. But Jordan Peele, we've now seen two films, Get Out and Us. They came from him. They were stories. He's a writer-director. He's a true auteur. And I think it makes sense to me that he has his own stories that he wants to tell. Not all filmmakers are that way. But I think in his case, he knows himself, and that's of course, knowing yourself is half the battle. And understanding, I think it's important that he positions himself. He's not a director for hire. He's somebody that you're going to buy into his vision or you're not. And Jason Blum over at Blumhouse certainly has, and it's worked out. And he has the power now to shape his own destiny. And I think that's a great place to be.
Chris, given the films that we've seen from Jordan Peele so far with Get Out and Us, I thought Get Out was a lot better than Us, to be frank with you, but I still appreciated Us. Do you think Jordan Peele is making a good decision here, or do you think maybe exploring like the biggest genre in movies is something that maybe he should have considered?
I think this is a great move for him personally to not do this. I think it shows a lot of integrity, and it kind of feels like, how people tell you don't meet your heroes?
Right.
Maybe don't be in charge of Blade or the MCU if you really, really love it, and let it happen and enjoy it as a fan. He's got a lot of plates that he's balancing right now, so maybe don't embark on something that you don't feel like you're fully prepared for or that you would do, the greatest job for. For actors, it's really great when you see somebody who loves a franchise to jump in. We saw that with David Tennant and Peter Capaldi with Doctor Who, how they immersed themselves into something that they were total fanboys for. But then you kind of see other people maybe drop the ball occasionally, Stephen Moffat, when a fanboy takes over a storyline and is in charge of the direction of something. So I feel like this is a good move, and it really shows that he only wants to work on things that he knows he will do well and will have passion for.
Well, guys, what do you think about these comments from Jordan Peele? Do you respect them and say, hey, the guy knows what he wants to do, he's got a clear vision for what the stories he wants to tell? Or are you like, hey, man, it's the biggest genre out there, maybe you should cash in on that? Jump down in the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. One more.